All right, folks, we had a really packed webinar this past week on the inside job, creating a leadership development process inside your own organization and bringing that in house and really creating an amazing way to continually develop your leaders. And there's lots of reason why we should do that. And there's great steps we can take to do that. And we shared that all in the webinar. So if you haven't watched that yet, check out the replay. But for those of you that did attend the webinar and had questions, we ask you to send them to us. And we have some questions and we promise to answer them. So this video is a way to answer those questions to those who did attend and did submit questions for us to answer and follow up. So here we go. Hopefully this won't be longer, the webinar. I'll try to be brief. But you can reach out to us at capstoneleadership.net on our contact us page, and you could book a call or you could submit a question there too, and we could engage in further interaction about answering your specific question. But I'm going to do my best to provide some spot on, brief, on point answers to 5 questions that we received. So here we go. Number 1, the question was, accountability is obviously part of the process, but it sounds so negative. How can we make accountability more positive? Well, that is something that in our company, when we first founded it in 2012, we were using the word accountability a lot. We still do, but we were using it a lot and we were getting that same feedback, is accountability is negative. We put that even in our framework, creating great strategies, creating alignment to those strategies, creating accountability to those strategies. But we ended up changing that word accountability to ownership. And we have a little different definition of accountability when we switch it to ownership, which was really what we wanted to create, was ownership. And it's really accountability plus relationships, plus empowerment and engagement. So it's kind of a combination thing that includes accountability and really couples it with things or pairs it with things that make it positive, like relationships. So if we have a positive relationship with someone, we can engage in accountability tactics in a different way than if we don't have a great relationship. That's why strengthening relationships is one of the 9 core leadership practices that we feel should be part of every organization's leadership bundle. And so relationships is a key piece to accountability and making it positive. The other thing is rebranding it or normalizing accountability as an act of caring. So I noticed equals I care. I noticed you haven't been rounding. I care enough about you being successful in your job as a leader and having great relationships with your employees and your peers or otherwise. And I care enough about you, our high standards for that, that I'm going to have this accountability conversation, right? I'm going to bring it up. So that normalizing it as an act of caring is a different way to approach it. And that really requires, again, relationships and also psychological safety, that it's safe, it's normal, it's just what we do. We have adult conversations like this. Yes, it's accountability, but it's all in the spirit of caring. And so that would be my response to that question is, how can we start shifting accountability, which is a key component to elevating anyone's practice or behavior or skill? How do we do that in such a way that it's more positive? And so that's our take on that and coaching on that. So the next question is related to, is it possible to get consistency in how leaders lead across the entire group of leaders, even if it's across an entire agency or system, et cetera? So is it realistic to be able to work to achieve that? Like, is it possible? And so what we would say to that is, okay, let's get real first. My getting real first is you will never likely be 100% consistent across every leader, however many you have, even if it's a small number or a huge number. There will never be absolute, complete consistency in how leaders perform their leadership role. So if you're very, standard work of leaders, here's our 9 core leadership practices, and we're training everyone, mentoring and coaching everyone to be consistent in the application of this standard work. Go. Is it realistic that we'll get to a point where everybody is competent, consistent, confident with these practices? And the answer is no. Okay, like the answer is no. However, that doesn't mean we shouldn't try. And that doesn't mean we shouldn't take these steps to define what it means to be a leader in our organization, set the standard work for that, and train and mentor our people to that standard, our leaders to that standard work. Like, just because we know the end result is not going to be everyone being consistent in the practice doesn't mean we shouldn't try to get there. In fact, once we get to 50% or more, there's staying power for the solution, right? But even at 15% of your leaders leading in this new way, you start getting results. So when you get those early adopters and those, first people that are willing to do it the new and better way, and they're getting consistency with it, it is amazing. But don't stop there. It is amazing the kind of results you can start seeing in your organization's culture, in its performance, and in its results. It is amazing, especially in the departments or the areas where these leaders are leading. Like, you're going to start to see it there. And then people are going to be like, wow, what's happening down in the ER? Like, all of a sudden their patient satisfaction is through the roof. All of a sudden their employee engagement is through the roof. All of a sudden their quality and their safety metrics are soaring. Like, what is going on there? And you're gonna start making that connection, right? And so then that feeds the organization, that positive feedback loop. Let's keep going. Let's get the next leader, next leader. That's why it has to be a process, and that's actually why it has to be internal, right? You can't keep bringing somebody from the outside to do this. This is why it's an inside job. This speaks exactly to it. So, will it ever be 100% consistent? No. But should you try? Yes. And the 5 steps we prescribed actually help you to be able to be on that pathway to gaining more and more consistency with more and more leaders. That's called diffusion. Each leader adopts, then we diffuse it across the group. And once we get to 15%, we start seeing some amazing results. Once we get to 50%, we have staying power, and then keep going, keep going, keep going. But, I know leaders that 10, 15 years into this, are still struggling to be consistent, but the organization hasn't given up on the standards, and they haven't given up on that leader. So here we go. Question number 3. How do we do this? Meaning create an internal process, ongoing process for developing our leaders when we have such a lack of people with coaching and mentoring skills. And so, really that's obviously an area of learning. So when we talked about having a leadership development plan, we recommend the 9 core leadership practices, one of which is giving and receiving feedback, which is a form of coaching and mentoring, of course. But also, there's those other skills that leaders need. And if mentoring and coaching, and you can, again, bring that in as an inside job. But, the issue here is that often, without an internal process that's organized and developed that holds people out as internal experts or peer champions on very specific leadership practices or skills or whatever, if we don't have that, it's by default left to the leader's boss. So if you're a middle manager, it's left to your, VP per se. And so it's left to your boss to be that mentor and coach to you on everything. And guess what? I was a VP for a long time, more than 20 years, in various senior leadership roles in healthcare. And so I would have, all of these middle managers reporting to me, and I really couldn't be the sole person to mentor and coach them on everything, right? That's unrealistic. And right now, without a process in your organization to build up coaches and mentors and peer champions, which we recommend, and use, a large roster of internal peer champions and subject matter experts, and build them up in your own organization. And yes, build them up with coaching and mentoring skills for sure if they're serving in those roles. But by default, if you're leaving it just to the vice presidents to be the coach and mentor, they may not be good at it, and or they may not be able to be of great help in certain areas of the leader's struggles. And so it's really not the best model to put all of that on the senior leader. Certainly they have a role in it, maybe that accountability piece, which is positive, and some other things too to mentor and coach, but it takes a village. And through a organized process, you can create a village of people that are internal peer champions, subject matter experts that can come to the aid of their peers, other leaders, to be that mentor and coach, maybe not on everything, but on certain specific things. So that would be my response to that one. So the next one is our OD, meaning I believe Organization Development Department, owns our leadership development process right now. Yet it's pretty obvious it's not working. What could we be doing wrong? Well, that we'd have to dig in more to that. Obviously, there's a lot more probably to unpack there. But what I would kind of like first blush go at here is related to step one of our 5-step process, which is have a team that champions this process. So it's not just one department's responsibility or one person's responsibility to steward and develop and execute this leadership development process. And in particular, that steering group or organizing group, not just a single department or person, but this team that is organized to do this work represents the people that will be doing the work. So clinical leaders, non-clinical leaders, different levels of leaders, senior leaders, frontline leaders of all sorts. So it's a represented stakeholder group so that they can provide the very best input into the process, into the planning, into the learning needs, all of that. We call that do it with them, not to them. So if it's coming from a single department or a single person, it can feel imposed upon versus it being like, we're creating this together. I'm part of creating this. We're doing it together versus it's being done to me. And so that would be, step one. Who is this team? And we wouldn't recommend that it just be a department, especially a department of one, which a lot of OD departments might be in small organizations. Lacking stakeholder input. There's likely not enough talent or expertise there, maybe about learning. There's a good talent about learning, but maybe not about the subject matter. And so I find that to be true. Like when I teach a group of leaders, some of these practices, well, all of the practices that we teach, the 9 core practices that we teach in our leadership bundle, I've done them all myself, right? I not only know them and can teach them and know kind of the theory behind them and the, didactic part about them, I've actually practiced these practices. And so when you're holding out internal trainers, especially to your workforce, it's really great when the audience can relate to them because they know the trainer has done it. It's not just like they know it, but they've done it and they can speak to the struggles. They can speak to the stories of success, overcoming struggles, getting the wins from these tactics. Where if you just know it in theory, and I'm not knocking OD departments, there's a lot of brilliant, amazing people working in those departments, but just like the VP, a lot of very brilliant, great VPs out there that know a lot about a lot of things. It can't just be on them to be the ones that train up all your leaders. It's just not the right model for the right reasons, in particular that believability, the amount of diverse content that we need to train people up on. And also that sense of it being done together versus being done to you. So do it with them, not to them. So 2 more questions to go, folks. Next one being, we're really having struggles to develop the skills, in particular of our middle managers. What could be, kind of the issues behind that we need to maybe look at. So, usually the middle manager group is the largest volume of managers in an organization. Even if you're a small organization like a critical access hospital, likely by the numbers, that's your largest group of leaders is your middle managers. The same is true, in big organizations. So this is an important group. They're closest to the employees, they're closest to your patients, they're closest to the workflows, etc. So this is like probably the most important group that needs to be developed. And in this organization, they say they're really struggling to be able to develop the skills of their middle managers. So first I want to go with, do you truly have a process? So let's go to the process first, right? And so I don't know your process, but if you're struggling to develop their skills, you have to look at, that's the output of your current process, good or bad, and so if the output is bad, meaning their skills are not being developed, then the process isn't working. And so, let's look at our process. And in the webinar, we prescribe a 5-step process that has been used over and over again by organizations to build up their the skills of the middle managers and other managers too. So I would say there, you've got to look at your process. If you're struggling, if their skills are struggling, then your process to develop their skills is struggling. It's again that 116 bashing that I talked about in the webinar is like, it's on us as an organization. If our middle managers are struggling in their skills, truly it's on us. And they have a piece in it, ownership in it, sure, but we can't just look at it and blame them and say, hey, develop your skills. There is a process that we need to have to be able to be playing our role in that too. So the process would be the first place I would look. But, another thing, just getting real here, is not everyone is a leader and can be made a leader. I've been a senior leader for decades, so I know it's true. I know that there's times that, gosh, I was going to make her a leader and I was working harder at it than she was. And, there's a certain point where it's just not a right fit. So if your process is great and they're going through the process and they're just not able to master the skill of leadership and be consistent and competent at it with a good attempt over a good amount of time, then maybe you need to reconsider, are they right fit for the position. So I just have to put that out there, but usually it's not, but it could be, depending on how your selection process is again. And so there's a lot of factors there, boy. But I'd look at the process first there. The other thing that comes up there for me is that sometimes we dabble or tiptoe into leadership development with our middle managers because we figure they're too busy to be part of this, right? Like we can't subject them to leadership development because they don't have time for it. They're already busy, again, with usually those default activities of the whirlwind and firefighting and reacting to day-to-day operations. At best, maybe spending some time doing management tasks like payroll scheduling and the like. And again, firefighting and problem solving, those kind of things, just to keep operations running, especially in a time when maybe that's certainly a challenge, and maybe more so than ever. So we've got this middle management group that, is perceived as being, busy and doesn't have time for this. And so we can't ask already busy people to do one more thing, like develop their skills that would help them to be able to calm down this whirlwind, be able to fix problems so that they don't have to keep facing them day after day after day after day, which is keeping them busy. Okay. So it's like a cycle, right? If you don't invest in them and their development, then, they're just going to continue struggling. So, it's a fine line about how much, aptitude they have, or ability they have or bandwidth they have for learning, given the distraction of the day-to-day whirlwind and management responsibilities. But if they're not developed in their skill of leadership, then by default, they're going to spend all of their time in those other activities. And the webinar kind of goes into that a little bit more about why that's just not sustainable. Really, when you can't ask busy people to do one more thing, like learn to lead and fix problems permanently and proactively work on making the future better, then we're sentencing them to continued struggle, and their employees too, and likely the patients or the work that they're leading in their department. So yeah, even though they're busy, and maybe distracted, maybe stressed and burnt out, don't think that's a good reason to withhold leadership development. In fact, that might be what they need more than anything. It was just like in the webinar I mentioned, like investing in this, even if your organization is losing money, like mine was, if we were losing millions of dollars a year, we made a big investment, committed the investment to training up our leaders, because how were we going to fix this long term was to have great leaders with great skills to be able to manage the organization and its finances and quality and other things, right? So where are you going to put your time and energy? Where are you going to put your money? And I think, certainly my experience year after year has shown that there's a huge return on investment for time spent and money spent on leadership development. Maybe not in the short term. These are not quick wins. This is the long game, right? And then lastly here, the question is it possible for small organizations that don't have education departments or organizational development departments or designated, people like that, to be able to actually bring their, create an internal leadership, development program? And our answer to that is a resounding yes, because that's, what we've been helping, in particular, small organizations to do, dozens of them for the last, decade or so, and decade or more. And so most of the work we have been doing has been in that size organization. And in fact, they're probably the best set up to do it very, very well and to get quick results from it, because you have fewer leaders to train. And as soon as you start getting that going, you start seeing results faster, because you get to that 15% faster and that 50% faster, because it's a smaller end to start with, smaller group of leaders. And yes, using the 5-step model that we prescribed, the first step is to create that team. And we recommend that, again, an answer to an earlier question, it shouldn't be an OD or an HR or an education department that owns this. It should be a stakeholder group of leaders who represent the whole and steward the process. And so, yes, a resounding yes. Now, do we know that's challenging? Yes. I know in my organization, when we did this, we had to reinvent the wheel here. Like, we had to start from ground zero, trial and error, study and adjust, figure it out along the way. But and it took us longer. It's exactly why we developed this product that we have, the Just Start Solutions, which basically takes a decade plus of experience with dozens of organizations that have created this internal leadership development process. And we put the plan, the manual for the 5 steps, the tools, the things that get your entire, team equipped, and then your entire organization equipped to be able to train up your leaders, and also be able to create those peer champions, be able to create, those learning and signature learning events, be able to create all those accountability tactics and those kind of things. So like, it's just completely packaged, including training modules, including train the trainer modules for your creating those internal peer champions and whatever. So we always recommend, even though, we call it the case method, copy and steal everything, we challenge the team, then make it yours, make it better. And so that's what our clients, our partners have been doing all across the country over these years, has been taking this, standard set of these 5 steps, these 9 core leadership practices, and they've been figuring it out. How does this work here? How do we make this work here? How might we do it a little bit differently that makes it better for us? How do we brand it as ours? How do we really make it ours? And so create that ownership, and then study adjust over time, making it ours better and better over year after year. And so, yes, small organizations can do it. Yes, organizations without special departments or adding departments or adding experts at large salaries, you can do this. And we've watched organizations do it over and over and over again, and we've helped them to be able to do it quickly. So if you're interested in learning more about the Just Start Solutions for creating your own internal leadership development program, reach out to us, capstoneleadership.net. We'll click on that, contact us page there. And there's a spot where you can book a call with us, or there's a spot where you can just reach out to us to ask for more information, whatever. So there we go. Those are the questions that were posed to us in follow up to that webinar. And again, the replay should be available here with this Q&A as well. So you might want to watch the replay next if you didn't see the webinar. But for those of you that watched the webinar, hope you saw your question answered here. And if you have more questions, or that was your question and I didn't answer it thoroughly enough because I didn't understand maybe some of the deeper meaning of the question, again, capstoneleadership.net, contact us page, and reach out and book a call. Hope to talk to you soon. If you do have more questions or are interested in our Just Start solutions for the 5 steps your organization can use to create your own internal leadership development process.